Good morning, everybody, witches, pagans, viewers, everyone. So I just wanted to share some of my more recent experiences with the goddess, Hecate. And basically, I guess before I get started, I just want to say that the spell went wrong for all of the right reasons. And when Hecate does things for the devotee, or for you, the spellcaster, she doesn't do them for necessarily the immediate benefit, but for the long-term benefit. And sometimes stuff does not go your way in the way that you planned, but Hecate has a plan, and it is what she says. So, to that end, I forgot to put in my mic. So to that end, I just want to say thank you to Hecate, first of all, and thank you all for watching this very, very juicy video. So enough with that. Let me just get into the story. So, we just passed Samhain this year, and I cast a spell about 2 months ago for a road opener spell. What is a road opener spell? A road opener spell is a spell that opens doors, it removes blockages. And so in that regard, when you give it to Hecate, of course, the goddess of the crossroads will just go ahead and take it upon herself to carry the message. So I wrote my petition, I dressed my candle, I set my candle on my petition. Now, my petition was nothing really specific. My petition was very broad, with remove blockages, anything that's just in my way, please just remove it from my path. I feel like this new job I got is really wonderful, and I just want to know what's coming next. So I had applied to a company. I work in social work, mental health, special needs, and I still do. And so my idea was to, after 90 days, go for a promotion. And I cast that spell on a Wednesday. Then I got to work 3 hours later, and 2 people were fired. So my jaw is on the floor, and I'm like, oh crap, this was not how I thought the spell was supposed to go. Mind you, I had been building my intention for several days. So, and I cast a spell on that Wednesday, so then I went to work later. I'm like, okay, maybe my intention was just too crazy, maybe I just needed to pull back a little bit, but whatever. The one person did need to go, the other person didn't. Regardless, we're now down 2 people. From there, I finish out my day, and even from what I understand, the supervisors of my team didn't know that they were going to be terminated either. Apparently a higher up read her email and did that when she read the email on one of my coworkers being cast out from the company. And sometimes there's obviously there's different levels of supervisors, but these supervisors were not put in on the decision. They weren't asked for input. They were just simply informed in an email that these 2 people had been terminated. Great. And oh wait, yeah, the week before, the person who hired me was moved to a different unit, so she was no longer my boss. Instead, some other lady was my boss, even though she hired me and interviewed me. And I was really annoyed by that. So in any case, so I don't have my boss. I did the spell, and now 2 people are fired. Perfect. So the very next day, I work a shift in the disciplinary school. And, while I'm in the school, the teachers and I are talking. And I'm talking to some of the other staffers in the school. And they spill the tea. They're like, oh no, this company's really bad. You need to leave. Everyone needs to leave. Even one of my coworkers said that she doesn't even want the name of the company on her resume. That she's looking for something else. And I was like, is this really a big pile of doo-doo I stepped in? Without a paddle? I'm very, very lost at this point. One of the teachers told me that, if I know what's good for me, I will leave the current ward that I am working on and move to another ward. And in the meantime, just leave the company altogether. And I'm looking at her like, what do you mean? Like, I put so much work into getting this job at this company that I wanted really bad. I interviewed in 3 different states to work for this company. To no avail, I suppose. So, now I'm feeling like a little distraught. I'm like, oh my god, my spell is like not working. Obviously not the way I wanted, so now I'm getting mad. But I'm like, all right, let me just keep it in my back pocket. So I just start browsing opportunities and just getting some stuff together mentally, like being mentally prepared to, okay, well, I'm not going to make this job through to Christmas, but let me do 3 months, 6 months, whatever. Maybe I won't go for the promotion, maybe I'll just stay where I am and just leave the company altogether. Never even got that far. What else happened that week? Oh, here's the real tea. So, cast the spell on Wednesday, talked to some teachers, and found out some people were fired. Then I talked to some teachers and coworkers, found out that they don't like the situation either at the company. Then that weekend I work with some of the kids. And there was a situation, of course, I know where I am. They can be violent. They are special needs and mentally ill persons. They can be violent. And so when there's a violent outburst and you have to address that, you have to write what's called a incident report. An incident report is just a documentation, just describing to the reader as if they were there what happened, word for word, step by step, the time frames that you called for assistance, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, in this company, I cannot go anywhere without cameras watching. I have fingerprints, a digital key, and a physical key. Okay, so those 4 things. Cameras, fingerprints, digital key, and a physical key. I cannot go anywhere in the building without those 4 things. In the company without those 4 things. You just can't. And so I do my documentation, I submit it, and then the next day, I have to be debriefed on my report. In the same way that when an officer fires their gun, they have to be debriefed. Same thing, because I had to physically restrain somebody for having a violent outburst. My boss had no idea what I was talking about. She told me to clock in and return to her office, and that's exactly what I did. And so when I got to her office, she's like, okay, read this report and tell me if this is what you wrote. A lot of stuff that I wrote was missing, which pissed me off to no end. And it's also dangerous. I mean, this is state and federally submissible documentation with my name on it, with false information documented in there. They didn't write about the violence that occurred. The person who changed my documentation changed the violent outburst. They changed the part where I did the restraint. They removed it completely. And they removed the part where I had somebody else set off the alarm so that assistance would come. And I know it sounds like one flew over the cuckoo's nest, but it's not that bad, but it's an equivalent. Like, if you can imagine, if the nurses had to push a panic button, there would be a panic button to push. And I pushed it, okay? And so I filled all of that out in my documentation, and I submitted it. So when I'm looking at my report, and it's missing critical information that actually happened, that once again is on camera. Furthermore, somebody else witnessed it. Another employee witnessed it through a window, but she couldn't get to me because she couldn't get into my building because she didn't have the proper key. Different story. Okay? So there's a witness. It's on camera. To boot, now my supervisor, she's like, okay, I'm going to take your sworn statement. So we write the sworn statement, and I submit it to her. And then she says, by the way, I knew something was wrong when I looked at my daily reports. And I saw that the nurse came in and did a body inspection on this person. The only reason to do a body inspection is if there was an outburst of violence and or of restraint. But there was no documentation of violence or restraint. So the person who botched and altered my paperwork wasn't able to tamper with the nurse's paperwork. And so they didn't match. So my boss was confused as well as an equivalent boss was also confused on like, why does the nurse's documentation say something totally different? And then when I came in the very next day at mid-afternoon, that explained why there was the disparity in the paperwork. So you can imagine how dangerous the situation is. Now it's political. Now I'm pissed. I am absolutely furious. So my boss says, okay, don't worry about it. I'll just go ahead and do my end and figure out what's going on. And apparently it's happened before where people's information has been altered when they submit it. She comes to me 3 days later and she lets me know that my story is unfounded. Not by any fault of her own. It just is what it is. And of course I know she believed me, but there's nothing she can do. So it basically came back saying, the initial investigation came back saying that I never reported my information correctly, that I never wrote it down, that I never typed it. Okay, now you done pissed me off and I'm looking for something else. So that's exactly what I start doing. So somewhere around October 4th, I start looking for another job. Get another one straight away, something better and more flexibility, and I'll get into that some other time. Hecate be praised. I love her, right? And Freya as well, because when I work, I am definitely invoking the goddess at all times, especially being an empathic social worker. It can be so challenging in my field. It's hard. It's not the easiest job and it's not the most glamorous, but it pays the bills and I love it. So to that end, I start looking for work. And once I find another place, a company to be, I submit my 2 weeks notice. Okay, so now I've submitted my 2 weeks notice, and I'm so sorry, that was out of focus. I submit my 2 weeks notice to Human Resources, and basically the letter said, my experience thus far has not matched my expectations for this company, and so I will be leaving before my 90 days is finished. Typically you get a 90-day review, you get a raise. If you want to be promoted, you just apply, you get interviewed, all that type of stuff. And I am more than qualified. So I hand it in, and the woman at HR, she knows me, and she says, well, what happened? So I give her the short and sweet, like, listen, somebody altered my federally submissible documentation that is audited by the state every year, and I'm not abiding by that. So if somebody chooses to be, for lack of a better word, deep-throated by that and stay here, that's their problem. I will not be participating in that. Oh! It set off a shitstorm in all the Human Resources Department. The president of the Human Resources Department knows my name. When you do your exit interview, you typically do your exit interview towards the end of your 2 weeks. They did my exit interview straight away. I did an exit interview with, I think, 3 or 4 people, including giving one of them a copy of my statement that I had wrote several weeks previous. Like, hey, this is what actually happened. This is what was submitted, and it's wrong. So the people who submitted my documentation, I did name them because I suspected these were the only 2 people who could have done it, and so I named them, So it launched an investigation, and basically what was given to me by Human Resources was, this will not go away, and it will not go away quietly, because we're losing quality people over something that should never even be happening in the first place. I'm like, that's fine. And they're like, well, is there anything we can do to convince you to stay? I'm like, unfortunately, not at this time, because I have more flexibility. I have my weekends, I have my holidays pending an emergency. And when you work in social services, your time is not really your own. If you're on call or if there's an emergency, you're just going. It just is what it is. It's like having your own kids, except now instead of being responsible for your own children, you're responsible for everyone else's, if that makes any sense. But I'm sure it does. So they wanted me to stay so bad, but it's like the position I have coming to me is a better position, and it's not about money. It pays basically the same, but I have more flexibility and make my own schedule, and it's closer, and it's all these other great things. But driving an hour plus to a company that did this was not worth it. So when Hecate spilled the tea, it poured over. It was just crazy. And I'm telling like some of my witchy friends like what's going on, and they're like, oh my god, you need to leave. I'm telling some of my muggle friends what's happening at my new job that I thought I would like, and they're like, oh no, you need to leave. Even my brother is a cop, and he's like, you need to get the hell out of there, okay? Because anybody who alters federally submissible documentation that is audited by the state every year needs to go. So I left. I will be missed. I did leave on professional terms, and here is why. The reason why is, in the field of mental health, special needs, and social work, there are not a lot of people. Chronically understaffed. And part of it is because there are very strict rules on your record that you can have. You can't have anything like expressly violent. You have to have, generally speaking, a very clean, clear driving record. No drunk driving. If you get a ticket, you have to report it to your job right away. Depending on what the ticket is for, you might be terminated. It's just hard to staff because not a lot of people are abstinent from drugs and alcohol and have a clean driving record and have the patience to deal with the patients and have the capacity to deliver the services that are needed, and it just kind of goes on. And that's not to disparage people who have addiction and can't make it through. Like some of my coworkers, I've worked with people who live in halfway homes. They live in an addiction recovery home, and they go to work in social work. And that's not about having access to medication. It's nothing like that. But they are getting it together. And they've never been arrested for it necessarily. So they are able to, I don't want to say fly under the radar, but they're actively making steps to better their lives. And it's not right and it's not fair to hold somebody like, oh, you lost your license 5 years ago, so now you can't work in social services because you can't be trusted. It's not right and it's not fair, but it's what it is. I'm sorry. And maybe you apply and they forgive that because like, hey, it was 5 years ago. That was a long time. So you've been clean, you've been sober, you have a great driving record thus far up to this point. Congratulations, you're hired. And it's just tricky. So for this reason, I did leave on professional terms. You never know who's going to buy out, merging projects, companies coming together, people leaving, people going. Clients as well, clients and their families. You never know who you're going to see again. And it's such a small, small world that we live in, especially here where I live in the greater Philadelphia area. So with that, I am so grateful that Hecate got me out of that toxic work environment, that she saved me, but also that I learned a critical lesson. And if I had not worked that job at that company, I would never have had the confidence in myself to apply for a job that I wasn't even qualified for. I'm qualified for the job, but not collegiately. I was hired based on experience. And I do have a degree and all that stuff, but it's when people say they want you to have a master's in psychology to be a social worker or some such thing, take it with a grain of salt, because for every year that you have, that's generally speaking 1 semester of collegiate experience. That's what they kind of look at. But I just wanted to share my experience and my story with what I just, survived and experienced and lived through. And it was really, really quick. It was not scary at all, except that I was scared to go to work once I put in my 2 weeks notice. After I put in my 2 weeks notice, I started getting migraines at work. I started getting headaches. My heart was palpitating because I was so nervous. And I didn't need to be there. It was kind of like my fight or flight was kicking in. And so I didn't need to be there. I needed to leave. And ultimately, I probably wasn't supposed to put in a 2 weeks notice. I think that's what the migraines were trying to tell me. But ultimately, I'm very happy with my decision with leaving. I'm very happy with the position that I have now. I was not unemployed. So, today I'm just drinking my coffee and telling you the story of what happened to me in the last 2 months. And for Samhain, it was an amazing, amazing experience. I did a spell and devotional before work. I'm going to be making more devotional bread for Hecate. I have some here that you can see. And I just really, really hope that if you are not sure about where you need to be, you can email me at ShaySolstice@hotmail.com. It'll be in the description. And besides that, just blessed be and give thanks to the gods and goddesses, because they work really hard to make sure that we're okay. Lovely, say goodbye. This is my dog, Lovely. I have 3 animals. Lovely is my Yorkie. She is a rescue. I've had her for a year. Okay, say bye, honey bunch. Bye. Thank you all for watching, and I will talk to you in the next one. See ya.